Okay.
We're live already. All right, we are live. Let me just check to make sure everything is going well with the live. I do this all the time, but 1 second, you all. All the time. Okay. All right, we're good. Sounds good. All right, what's up, everybody? Thank you for coming through. So, as promised, I did say that I will be having a chat today with Jambalaya Talks. We're going to be talking about a chat. I named this chat "How Feminism Destroys Freedom, True Freedom," and I was like, I connected with Jambalaya on Twitter, and I've seen some of her stuff, the things that she talks about, and she's able to bring a real like blueprint of just a lot of historical events, full chock full of information. I'm so excited to have you on the show. So,
Hey.
Jambalaya, go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody.
Yes, ma'am. I'm Jambalaya Talks, better known as Ebby. And I have a YouTube channel that discusses cultural, social issues through a bibliocentric lens. And I've been on a few spaces with my bestie, Louisiana Sister Squad. We actually have an upcoming event May 24th. I believe it is 6 o'clock EST time, 5 o'clock Central. And we will be going into the effects of feminism, the boomerang effect. I'm sorry, butterfly effect. I always get that wrong. Uh, and I'm glad to be with my new friend Casey discussing this topic because I think it is so pervasive and affecting society, as Casey and I were talking earlier, on so many fronts. Looking forward to this.
Right. And my bad. And I'm like, Jambalaya. Just I knew your name was Evie. It just flows so quickly that I'm like, Jambalaya, introduce yourself. Like, no, that's
Yeah,
not her
that's
name.
all
Her name
good.
is Evie, y'all.
It's all good.
And Cindy is here in the chat. Cindy is another good friend that I've connected with on Twitter who is always like praying and everything. And Cindy's a
Awesome.
warrior for God. So, it's funny about Twitter. Sorry, they say Twitter is like so toxic. Like before I got on Twitter, what's up traditions? Yeah, twice in a day. Yeah, you know what? Let me drop the link in the I'm gonna drop the link in the comments real quick. But yeah, they say before I got on Twitter, I kept hearing, "Oh, it's so toxic. Oh, it's so toxic." And then I get on here and I'm like, it's really not that bad. So I think it's the experience that people just make out of it because I've made some amazing connections on Twitter. So go
Definitely.
figure. Um, so what's up, Bozette? What is up? So yeah, Jambalaya, Abby, I'm gonna put your link on in the comments and I'll put it in the description too.
Thank you.
Okay,
Appreciate
so
that.
because you guys check her out, like amazing, but don't worry, during the chat, you're gonna want to go and subscribe immediately. All right. So let's get started. So I guess, well, to talk about a little bit today, some of the stuff that we're seeing, like with all of the movements. All of a sudden, I thought Pride Month was next month, but apparently it started 2 weeks early. I don't know. Every commercial is like, yay,
Wow.
trans and this, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, I thought that was next month. Like, wow, all of a sudden, everybody's like virtue signaling now. Now for me, I always say like, okay, it's part of the great reset and everything, but we need to know like what started this to get us here. And then I've always looked at like the different communities and the feminism community, like so that is like to me the beginning. So is it the beginning of all of what we're seeing here? Was that the first community?
Well, I think, and this is like really hard. I mean, a lot of times when I've had these conversations, I try to cram a bunch of historical content into the space because a lot of times I find these conversations only deal with the symptoms, right? It's like having inflammation in your foot and then your hands. People usually want to take pain medication to deal with inflammation, not understanding that it probably was years and years of a really bad lifestyle choices that caused that, right? So that's kind of where we're at. We're dealing with the symptoms. And I think what makes our generation especially interesting is that we're dealing with multiple symptoms on all fronts. at any given time, which is why it's really hard to kind of tackle these topics, is because, as you mentioned earlier with the trans situation, the trans is just kind of like a pick me girl, right? of a larger problem. It
Love
really
that.
is. And
Yeah.
so, because we end up kind of talking about one particular symptom ad nauseum, a lot of times people get so caught up in the abortion debate, in the trans debate, in the LGBT, and even those groups are having infighting, right? I mean, I just saw on Twitter the other day, I actually got my comment taken down because somebody was saying, it was a gay guy, I'm sorry, and he was saying, I'm not going to ever fly the rainbow flag again because the trans movement has come in. They were never a part of us. We need to get the T out of here. And they've just completely monopolized this flag. So I
Mm-hmm.
just politely said, well, imagine this is how Christians feel, because you all took a flag that was given to Christians via a covenant made with Noah. So you're crying, salty tears, and I'm gonna drink them because you guys weren't listening to us for a long time. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, well, when Christians stop being homophobic, maybe we'll give it back. And see, this is exactly why these conversations don't go anywhere, because
Well.
each group feels specialized, right, to be a victim. And they don't care about all of the things that are predicated off of why they think they're a victim. And the feminist movement goes all the way back to the 1800s. If I really want to do some like serious deep thinking about the origins, and I said this to you early before we started the show, Eve was literally the first feminist. Because what is feminism? Feminism is, I don't want to acknowledge that God made me come through man, then brought me back to man, right? So I, for some reason, not wanting to acknowledge this, am trying to find my own identity instead of submitting to the identity already given to me.
Right. Right. Yep. You're right. You are. You're right. Yeah. Because I mean, and that's just the reality of it. How funny is it? Like how it's. That's why when it goes back to God like that, you can't deny it though, because a lot of what we're seeing today, wouldn't it be that Eve would be the one to just eat the serpent, and knew to go to Eve first, like, yo, like, check out this apple real quick. I mean, come on,
Mm-hmm.
you're strong, you're independent, right? Like, who knows what kind of conversation, right?
That's when
Like,
she started hearing that survivor. I'm a survivor.
right,
I'm not going.
right. Like, you don't need to ask your husband. You can go ahead and just have that apple. And
Right.
then, and then she probably went to him like, well, if you love me, you'll eat it. I mean, it's just amazing to think about that. And then when you say like, so the first feminism, but you said it goes back to the 1800s. Like, so
Yeah.
what was
This
happening
is
around then?
so we kind of have a 19-year span, 19-20-year span between Engels, okay, and Karl Marx and the suffragette movement. So basically, you've got Karl Marx, or really Engels, writing something called The Origin of the Family, and about
Mm,
1884, okay, and basically what, and by the way, let's just expose that dude was living with his boo for like 20 years. Okay, so we're getting the origins of the family from a guy who never married this woman, okay, and shacked up with her for 20 years because both of them were opposed to the institution of marriage, though he was like very supportive of being faithful to your honey boo or whatever. I can't say your spouse. So, but but what happened was, Ingalls believed that women were kind of being taken advantage of, okay, because he was trying to redefine what a woman's place was in society, because
mm,
they looked at the nuclear family as a type of terrorism, okay. And I'll give you a quick example of this. So this is an article that I took notes off of from a woman who wrote for The Guardian. She's since passed, but she said this: middle and upper class people are more likely to have their children later when they are financially stable. Middle or upper class teenage pregnancies are more likely to end in abortion than teenage pregnancies among poor families. And I'm assuming, she didn't say this, but I'm assuming this is due to money and education.
mm-hmm,
Now, she goes on to say, Men and women who have real choices are the ones that will have children. Early and unplanned parenthood is now broadly the choice of people who look around them and perceive their options are narrow. So again, this has to be predicated on, because this is what we constantly hear, is that those that don't have much education, those that don't have many finances, you know, if they get pregnant, God forbid, they have to secure, you know, their future and their ability to work by killing their unborn children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, these are the tropes of Margaret Sanger and Du Bois, and it goes on for a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And in feminism, right, she says,
Mm-hmm.
has liberated aspirational and affluent women because it has ensured that women who are capable of financial independence are more able to achieve it within marriage or outside of it. Although the continuing gender pay gap is testament that even this success has been highly circumcised. Now, this was written back in the 90s, and she's already saying that even women who have the wherewithal financially, right, to push back having children in marriage and out of marriage still are not equal in pay. And she says, I don't imagine that 1970s feminists envisaged the rejection of educational opportunities, the refusal of family planning options, and the graft of bringing up children alone and on the breadline as brave new world female choices for a post liberation, listen to that term, post liberation era, any more than they envisaged the advent of boob jobs, pole dancing, supermodels, and store card bankruptcy. Actually, it is a big fat irony that feminists are now obliged to defend the right of lone mothers to stay at home with their young children when the initial idea was to, again, liberate women from the obligation to stay at home with their young children. So I love to look up terms, okay? The
Mm-hmm.
term liberate means to set someone free from a situation,
Mm-hmm.
especially imprisonment or slavery in which their freedom is severely restricted. So this woman is actually equating a woman who stays at home with her children, of which I am one, with slavery and imprisonment, and that the pre-liberation movement was predicated off of Moses and Bible thumpers. And so therefore, Ingalls speaks to this. He speaks to this 19 years earlier,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And says that the woman who stays at home with her children is basically just a tool of suffering and bondage, okay? So we have a guy who's shacking up with his honey boo boo telling us what family ought to be. And this is what he had to say. He said that the family is a thorn, okay? And
Uh-huh.
it is due to economics alone because the father is the head of the home and the mother is what's called the proletariat. She's the worker.
Mm.
She is in bondage.
Oh, that word.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
under the economic tyranny of Papa. And he puts Papa in quotations. So you have now these women screaming in the streets, the pink pussy hat wearers, right? All of this. And they're telling women, you should be allowed to have unbridled sex and kill your child. You should be allowed to work a job just like a man, get paid just like a man, even if the sector you're in isn't anywhere, you know, close to what men do. You don't work the
Mm-hmm.
same hours, you don't have the same health issues. Okay, but you should get paid the same. We want equity. Okay, but at the same time, you should open the door for me because now we've moved away from the Me Too movement. Now you should treat me like a lady. If I hit the wall and I'm 45, and because I hated men for all the years I had my career, you should still want me. Okay, and you should want my homeboy who says he's a woman and is trans. You should want both of us. We are
A
equal.
mess.
See Michael with the beard as a woman. How dare you reject me at 50 and him with a penis? You have no right. That's pretty much where we're at with first, second, and third wave feminism because they're all pretty much the same thing.
Yep.
They're all the same thing. One just maybe uses race and
Yep.
civil rights, yeah, as a way of addressing first wave. But they all are saying that they don't like what God created, which is the
Yep.
nuclear family.
Yep. And so how do you spell Ingalls? Because I want to pull up his pink picture for
It's
receipts.
Engels.
Okay, Gels. Yeah. All right.
And it's
Yeah. So it's funny because then Ingalls said that before Marx, and then Marx's whole thing was he wanted to dethrone God. And so it always comes back to like, I'm mad at God, right? And so
Yes.
what's the closest thing I tell myself, like what's the closest thing to God, like, or that love, right? That unconditional, undying love that you where God forgives us for everything.
Mm-hmm.
He gives us grace, and it's almost you can't understand it. The closest thing is a parent to the child is the family, right?
Absolutely.
So, because you would die for your kids, or you would, like, you'll pick up a sword for your children, like, you ready for when it comes to my kids, don't mess with my kids. I mean, I saw a Twitter tweet this weekend that reminded me, like, people are can unify on one thing, and that's when it comes to the children, because the Secretary of Education, I forgot his name, but he tweeted something like, I'll pull up the tweet for everybody, but he tweeted something like, trust teachers with their kids,
Oh, I
and
saw
da da da.
that.
Yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
the
Saw that.
whole thread was ratio. The whole thread, not one person, not even a bot showed up to be like, I don't think he's wrong. Everybody was like, what? Who you talking to? Da, da, da. I saw people on that thread that I haven't seen in like months. I'm like, oh
That's
my God. It
crazy.
was a reunion. People were like, no. So it comes to the kids. And like, actually, like Cindy says, a mother, yeah, a mother, because mom holds baby inside, and, in the womb and everything. And that's a special bond, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can see how the destruction of woman, and this is not about being ideological, right? But we have to talk about like the destruction.
Yes.
Okay, so a woman is expected, if you think about women, is like mother in nature. I mean, let's just even think about just carrying a child, like the fact that God, like, chose, like, women, this is what you're going to do. My creation, I want my creation to be inside of you. That's special. And these people make sure to talk about it like it's nothing, like a birthing person. And
Yes.
so they take away from the woman, the mother. Okay, now also they had to attack the woman first, like you said, like in history, this man is writing about, oh, a woman is a proletariat because she's at home taking care of her children, which, mind you, today I wish that was me. Like, everybody could choose their life, but that's not slavery to want to nurture your family, right? But that's how they write it. They had to attack the woman's mind first, like, oh, you're still in the
Absolutely.
house. And so to break the family, they had to break the woman first, and then the woman now has to stand for being a woman, and so now she has to stand for a bunch of degeneracy, you
Yes.
know.
Yeah, because she's pretty much extra self out. Listen, Ingalls actually said, well, I should say Karl Marx, I'm sorry, actually said women were systematically oppressed by the ruling class. Okay. And the ruling class gave women options. So, what Marx and Ingalls believed was that women were treated merely as second class citizens and they literally called for the elevation of women's status. You hear the same language in the feminist movement, right?
Right.
And they expected it both in the domestic sphere and the broader social environment. So, to your point, think about this. If women have to be removed from what God called them to be, they have to have another class. They have to have another duty. They have to have another assignment. Okay.
Hmm.
And that assignment comes with its own charter, its own bylaws, which have to completely replace God's. And so now to be seen as a
Hmm.
woman who takes care of her home, who is submissive to her husband, is actually like you taking an L, right? You
Yeah,
taking a,
right.
yeah, you, you,
Yeah, I know
you
what you
getting a
mean. Yeah.
lesser position.
Yeah, and then it's so, it's so crazy because these discussions, these great thinkers, these philosophers who sit down and they wrote all this stuff to destroy the world, and but it transcends all the way to 2023, or even, before then. I remember hearing Black women, because, a lot of times on Instagram, and they always find us to be the loudest women to discuss
Yes.
some degeneracy. So, who'd be like, I ain't got time for no man. You doing all that for him. You cooking for him. And you're like, and so it's like, I was always just kind of like, I mean, if that's what somebody wants to do, like, what's the big
Right.
deal, right? But then look at what they're saying. They don't know who Engels is. I'm not, I'm just saying, right? It's not
Right.
like we're sitting here, these discussions like, yeah, because when I was reading Engels, girl, right?
Yeah, that's not happening.
Right. But they're saying the things that these people are saying, like
Yes.
it is exactly that. And that's why, like, so I pulled up some pictures. I mean, I guess this is like young him and old him or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
these people knew how to really like plant their seeds in. And it still goes back to a woman listening to a man, though, if you think about it, though. I mean, it still does.
It
So
does.
um just crazy, and all that liberation and everything. And it's funny because like I've been taught that like the Bible actually prophesies about the French, what was it, the French liberation movement or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
in 1798.
French Revolution.
Yeah, the French Revolution was
Mm-hmm.
like some sexual revolution or something. I don't know. Everybody was getting liberated all of a sudden, but
But not really.
yeah, and and isn't that the biggest? And then yesterday I was watching this cartoon called The Great Controversy, because there's a book by Ellen White called A Great Controversy that,
Mm-hmm.
I am 7 Days Adventist, so we do talk about Ellen White's like her predictions and some things that she talked about and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But in the cartoon, they're showing you that the devil is saying like it does get spiritual. You can't help it. It has to, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
these people who started this, they weren't afraid of saying, "Oh, I know there's God. I hate him." And so
Right.
that's why I'm coming for him however I get a chance. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so when the devil like came to the earth, it's like he's supposed to be like this is my earth, I rule this earth. I will lie to these people and tell them I'm going to give them freedom, because why would you want to follow God? That's not free will. Like that's not free will to worship God and try to do everything he tells you to do. You could do whatever you want, but it isn't freedom, because then you go and you answer to the flesh, and then you get all this confusion, and then these communities are fighting, first of all, for things that they already have. Gender pay gap. What? Then go like be a train engineer and do some of the hard concrete work that men do. You don't want to do it. I don't want to do
Mm-hmm.
it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you saying? What are you saying?
Absolutely.
I had somebody tell me that, like, oh yeah, they paid male nurses more than they do you because they're males. And that's not true. Now maybe male nurses are doing more overtime than me, but that other part isn't the base pay. No, you know.
Absolutely. And there's less of them in that field. You find it's usually women that go in the field, and that's why. So it's not a racial gender issue. It's just that you have certain sectors of business that and corporations and jobs that people lean to. I mean, even Jordan Peterson has talked about this. Certain people are just kind of more due to their, not just their interests, but you just find, like, even with the teaching sector, you find more females. Women usually are more instructive with, nurturing and, kind of more emotional, so they
Mhm.
kind of have a tendency to find jobs in those fields that use those gifts and talents and abilities. That's just what it is.
Right. And so, all right, so like we're at that point. And so, like I said, I had said to you earlier, before the chat started, I was saying that, I was saying that feminism predated this civil rights movement. And earlier today, sorry y'all, on my chat, I think I'm pretty sure I said that I'm very disenchanted, or it might have been something I was taping, that I'm very disenchanted with the civil rights movement.
Oh, definitely.
No, you know what, I did say it this morning on the live. I'm so like, first of all, let me tell you something. When you go down the path of trying to find what's really going on, you find out that most of what you were told was not the
A
way it
lie.
really was. And you're like
That's right.
stripping off all this stuff, and you're like, yo, it didn't have to be like this, right? But like starting the NAACP was like women, these feminist women going with these Marxist men to tell people who were doing fine. Okay, I wasn't there to say they were necessarily doing fine, but you had a lot of Black folk who had their own businesses and stuff, and
Oh, definitely.
yeah, and they wanted to sell to whoever, and then you had some white folk who wanted to sell to whoever too. I've been told like they didn't care about selling to Black folk, and then but it's just that the state was in the way. Cops coming in saying you got to get out, separating them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of these people marching for less government, they marched for more government. We want to be equal. Why are you
Yes.
asking another human being to be equal? Like, What does that even mean? Your human rights are given to you by God. And so there's certain words now when I read them, they're like thorns. And of course, it's always, there's the women are just, of course, it's not all women. We know that, but the women's movement, this feminist movement, if there was a movement that is for women, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think it should be, because I do believe in certain things that, of course, are for women, like real
Absolutely.
women's health, right?
Yes.
Like the real women's health, not this. What they call women's health today is having an abortion. And so, if you
Mm-hmm.
can't have an abortion, you're not getting women's health. Like that's really what they focus on. But no, we need to talk about real women's health, like where y'all keep throwing people on abortion, birth control, and it doesn't really work with their system, and it's sending them into a little bit of a psychosis and stuff because you're messing with them. Nobody wants to talk about it. I've seen it.
Right.
I've
Right.
actually kind of lived a little bit of it myself, not the psychosis part, but it does do something to you.
It does. It
That's not
definitely
normal.
does.
So we don't get to have any real conversations, and it just it's always it's being, like I said, our spaces are even being taken over by kooks who call themselves men who want to dress like women.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have women backing it up.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, all of this is going to be uh, due to people not wanting to accept the origins of their existence, and thereby the origins of why the world is here. Right. So, and a lot of people want to only kind of focus on, like I said before, the symptoms, and don't want to deal with the root cause. There is no government, there is no president, there is no body politic, there is no education, there is no career, there is no income, there is no unity that's ever going to resolve a lot of what we're dealing with. Because remember, like Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun. We have to remember that, under Samuel, you had the people that wanted to be like the other nations. They wanted a king over them. They no longer wanted to be under a theocracy. And Samuel was very grieved by this. And God said, "Why are you so downcast? Don't you understand? It's not you they're rejecting, it's me." And he prophesied what the outcome would be for them wanting this king. Well, you could argue we were under a type of theocracy, but with an installed king that is not God. So if you have a pseudo God king, okay, trying to rule over you year in, year out, century after century, it can't help but get worse, because anything that is completely removed from its source is doomed to fail and suffer. Listen, Yuri Bezmenov kind of talked about this. He was a former KGB agent, and he talked about the social engineering that happens and how it's intended to completely demoralize the society. One of the things he says was that, because I was thinking about when you were talking about like language and words and stuff, and how people kind of get caught up in a lot of this terminology about birthing person and whatnot. He said that 15% of the KGB's work was actually brainwashing techniques used on the American population to infuse an ideology completely separate from what being an American even was. Mm-hmm. And then he emphasized how manipulation of public opinion can make people reject obvious facts. I mean, all of us can think about the past few years and seen that happen, right? And how they cater. Once they completely remove what you thought you believed, then they cater to the existing perceptions and interests. So that means that whatever you might be predisposed to have, ill feelings about, and whatever I might be predisposed to have ill feelings about, let's say for us, it would be women and race, because those are obvious things. They're immutable characteristics, okay? It would be easy to just completely do two things like bookends. One, cause us to see ourselves as being victims and less than by putting in social policies that would kind of make us not quite rise as high as other people, not because we couldn't do it, but just kind of tick the box a little bit. Okay. And then I can institute a situation like, well, we have to allow a certain amount of Blacks in this school, because don't you see, they're not forget about meritocracy. It doesn't matter if you're smart enough to stay there. All right. Thomas Sowell said most of the Black kids that were going to Harvard weren't prepared to go there because they weren't reading, right, when they were in junior high and high school. So a lot of them failed. They don't care about that. They care about creating a us versus them scenario. This is the Hegelian dialectic tactic. It always has been. We'll pretend that, we're for one group, but we really finance both groups to be at each other. So you're never looking at what we're doing. You're just looking at your neighbor. So if I can use the fact that you're Black because it's an obvious thing to tackle, and I can pick on the civil rights, maybe even throwing a little, you got to sprinkle some slavery in there always. Whenever you're Black, slavery got to come in there.
It reminds you, right?
Yeah. It reminds you constantly.
Don't forget.
And don't forget your two heroes have to only be Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass. That's all y'all got. That's it.
Okay.
Right. So we're going to give you two people that were abolitionists against slavery. So you just always talk about those people. And then you can lament. You couldn't get that job because you're Black. You couldn't get that house because you're Black. You couldn't get it because you're a woman. Now you've got victimization on both sides. And guess what? The government is here to help. And Reagan said, those are the words you should be terrified of hearing. We're the government, we're here to help you. Right. So if we're here to help you, how do we help you? Well, of course we will give you this home. Casey, yes, you can move in. Your man can't come. You better tell your baby papa to stay down the street. Yep. He can't come. So we're going to completely help you do what you were already doing, which is tearing down your family. Because people forget most Black families were intact all the way up until the 50s, 60s even. Even with drugs coming in, even with war, even with vets not getting, what they thought they should get and what they were promised to get, even without, 3 hots and a cot and a mule and land, all the things that Black people are constantly lamenting the government owes them. Okay. We were still intact. We were still reading books. We were still for education. Okay. We were not the BET thought crew. And now we are. That's what Black culture is. And they've sold it to us. And we have not realized that people selling it to us are literally supporting our own demise. We just took it and opened the box and said, let's spread this to everybody else and let the culture vultures play on our weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Well, feminism has done the same thing. And feminism has done it by women first not acknowledging that there is a order, a top-down order. You will not respect men if you don't respect God. Look, Casey, they're even trying to say that you can call God a she. I mean, come on.
Yeah, okay.
Come on now.
Okay.
You gonna make God a woman? You gonna
First of all, please. Right? Yeah. Like any real woman will tell you, let us not do that. But
please.
Okay.
I don't need no emotional God. I don't need no over emotional God.
It was something to prove. No thank you.
And then hating on other women. Okay. Why you talking to that guy? Why you ain't talking to me? Y'all can keep it. Y'all can have it. No,
leave all the confusion. Please.
No.
But you know what's crazy about that? I remember if it was me today, I would have been all over the situation. But this was 5-6 years ago before I realized what this country was going to turn into. So I'm pumping my gas, right? And this kid, and it's a kid because the child was probably for me, this is a kid 22, okay? So still impressionable, right? Walks up to me hey, we have a church over there. Okay. And we wanted to, if you want to come visit, and what's your church about? Well, we believe that, God is a woman. And I was like, and so I was like, no, God is a woman. Yeah, we believe God is a woman or whatever. And I was like, no, I was like, yeah, nah, I'm good. I was like, I'm a 7 days Adventist anyway. Now I just got out of work. I'm going home. Today I'd have been like, why? Why do you believe that? I would have went because I would have wanted to see what are they doing. They was these and it's all for nothing. So women would be so hyped. Yes, God is a woman. First of all, what does that even do? Right?
Yeah. You got to because the Antichrist agenda is you have to make God in your image. Feminism at its core, like you said earlier, and this was truly facts, that the feminist movement is not looking to build up women. It's looking to replace families. It literally is an Antichrist agenda prepackaged in another form with other labels, and they've got the flag and they've got the picture and the t-shirt and the whole nine. And literally women are falling for it. And it's because the one thing the enemy has the advantage over us in is that he's been here for a very long time, and he kind of knows how to tick all our boxes, right? How to get us displeased with our life. And like I said, you have women that are very upset that they don't have families, right? But they were the ones choosing to put the families off. They were told that they could have it all, Whitney Houston, right? They were told that they were a survivor. They were told they didn't need no scrubs, right? This is what they were chanting to the left, right?
Yo.
And now everything they put to the left is an empty closet where they got too much space. Right. And ain't no man's shoes in there, ain't no flannel shirt, there's no shaver in the bathroom, and they've got their career and their womb with very little egg mileage, okay, and a lack of ability to even ascertain how to be a woman. Because you can't replace a man and think a man is going to be attracted to that. Now, make that a larger movement. What do? You pretty much usurp the authority of God and the man. And now men, right, have become incels, or they've become Andrew Tates. This is the knee-jerk reaction to that movement. Okay, we either don't need you, or we're going gay, or we're going to just have every single woman we can, because women have pretty much used this playbook so long, trying to listen to rappers and Sierra, who got a whole man in a house and kids, by the way, okay, singing about you got it, you don't need a man. They have done this so long that men are exhausted. And it's unfortunate because they don't see that the whole point is to put them in a position where the government controls them. Listen to this. If you destroy capitalism, okay, which is the free market, what do you replace it with? UBI. If you destroy the nuclear family, God's creation, what do you destroy it with? A perverse family, and then AI can come in. If you destroy the creator of life, because scripture tells us that there will be nations that actually try to war against God, which I don't know, that you got to be smoking crack. Okay, you try to destroy the creator of life. What do you replace it with? The Antichrist. This is remove and replace. And anti doesn't just mean against, it also means in place of. Yes. So what we're seeing is feminism wanting to be in place, not just of men, but of God, because God is a representation of the strongest man, okay, the true alpha, if there ever was an alpha. Yet through Christ, he's able to relate to you and I because he cares about the widow. He cares about the woman caught in adultery. That man has to be destroyed by the enemy because the enemy wants to replace him and give us a system of do what thou wilt. That's what all this is about.
Yep. And so even to scale it back down to what you said earlier about women and the family, trying to make it without the family and everything, and how Black folk, we were doing good and all for a while until, of course, these socialists came in, these communists came in and told us that, even though your diner is beautiful, it's not good enough because you're not sitting next to white people and all that, just to confuse the whole situation. But so I was looking for clips of what they did to. There was something done to Black people, right?
Yes.
So the thing is, there was something done to Black people. I don't act like there wasn't. My thing is mostly like in 2023, we know now, so we have to be better. So that's why I talk about the trying to be better, But definitely, because the same experiment that was done to Black folk of destroying their family, they see how much it worked. And so now they're spreading it to everybody, right?
Absolutely.
And so this clip, I was trying to find like a smaller clip of it because, for first of all, this right here, the Vanishing Black Family, this is a special report done in 1986. I never seen the whole thing, but I've seen clips of it. And these young girls in 1986 are like, they're basically like, why would I want to get married and stuff like that? So I want to see if they actually, because obviously I can't put on a whole hour of it, right? But let's see if a little bit of in the beginning, maybe they can, say some of what.
Raise your hand if you're married.
Okay, yeah, they did.
None of you are married. Raise your hand.
Now, can you hear it?
Yeah.
All right.
If you would like to be married to your baby's father. One. The rest of you who don't plan to get married, why don't you plan to get married? I'd like to know that.
You already have your child to think about, and then a whole family to care for. It's a lot of responsibility. And then you don't want the commitments.
I wouldn't want no man holding me down because I think I can make it as a single parent.
But don't you think you might need help in raising that baby from a man?
Not really.
Wow.
I didn't have a father. My father wasn't in the home. So, it really, male figures not substantially important in the family.
Stop there because and then there's another one, but we'll come back to the other thing that they have because this one I saw too, welfare and the fatherless family, but I'm gonna come back to that because I want to discuss what we just looked at here. this sadness because
It is sad.
that's sad.
It is. It's
Like,
very sad.
That's I don't know, maybe I've been wanting to cry. I think it's because 40 is around the corner. So I look at everything so with emotion now, like
Yeah,
what
it is sad.
happened?
It is. And look, just to put a finer point on it, from a anecdotal, and I know, anecdotes are not always the best kind of starting point or example to kind of talk about the larger, cultural issues, but it is a good a kind of good starting point for people to understand that we're not just talking from we saw this on the news, right? That it has affected us. I was raised, and you heard some of my testimony, but I was raised by 3 generations of women, right? Mom was on crack, right? Sent me to my grandmother. Now listen to this: grandmother, great grandmother, and aunt, all living in the same house. No man. The only young men around me were my cousin and my brother, who were children. So these were angry Black women, right? I knew a bit of their history and their story, and my mom as well, right? Mom got pregnant with me at 18. And these women, through hearing them, through watching how they spoke about men, how they thought about men, I saw a contradiction live. And one of the contradictions was they all seemed to desire to have a relationship with men. Well, of course, that's a natural thing for women to want, right? And especially you're talking about women in their 40s, 50s, right? But the other thing was they had conditions that were impossible to meet, expectations that they themselves, to be honest with you, weren't even worthy of giving out, because they didn't even have expectations of themselves they were trying to put on these men. So I watched failed relationships, I watched fornication, I watched all of this as a young girl with my grandmother, my aunt, and my mom. Okay. And I saw a bunch of women who were sickly because they didn't take good care of themselves. I saw a bunch of women who were embittered. And when I got to an age where I could date, I literally was told it's okay. And I was about 17. It's okay to date a man that's 40 as long as he's got money. Okay. So imagine what that did for my psyche and what that made me think about the world. I immediately saw myself as, I'm going to have to use how I look. I'm going to have to use my body. Okay. I'm going to have to be seductive, because the only way I'm going to be able to get or catch a man, it's almost like trapping an animal, right? Get a man.
They do like catch a man. Yeah. Right.
Only I'm going to get a man is if I use these things, because I wasn't taught that I immediately came here in this earth with something of value, and that was being made in the image and likeness of God. That wasn't enough. So now the very thing that they trained me to use to entrap a man, they somehow forgot to tell me how to keep one. Okay, so I went through many, many years of horrendous decisions and outcomes of those decisions. Yes, 2 abortions because of it, right? This creates a behavioral pattern that doesn't just hurt you. So when we're talking about feminism, we're not talking about some little cutesy thing, that we see with a protest and a sign. We're talking about real people's lives. And I can just about guarantee, Casey, that a lot of those women that we see screaming, till spittle's flying into the camera and they're on television, I guarantee, go take a camera and investigate their home life. Just like the video you just showed. You're going to find some similarities there.
Wow. First of all, thank you for sharing, because I have heard some of your testimony, and your everything is just so beautiful to me. I mean, of course, it's parts of it that's sad, but it's the whole, you holistically is beautiful to me, because you really embody like what God wants for people. So,
Amen.
It's not, you learn from where you came from, right? Because we can't tell people like, oh, just forget about where you came from. Like, no, it's a part of my life, but I don't have to stay there.
That's
You know
right.
what I'm saying? So
You're not the total sum. You're not the total sum of your bad choices. You can always decide. And this is someone with a ninth grade education, right? A lot of people are shocked to find that out because they're like, "Oh my God, you're so articulate." Well, yeah, I read, have been reading, love reading. I mean, I did grow up reading, even in that calamitous household, right? So that kind of always saved me. I've always very, very interested in information of all types. I've never limited myself to only one category of information, and my interest in wanting to know was not so I could try to impress people. It was a genuine interest in wanting to know how things work. Why do people think the way they think? Why do they believe what they believe? And as I was not brought up in a Christian household, I always kind of lament that I wish I was like my children are. But I think it kind of gave me an edge because it didn't stop me from pursuing, digging into things ad nauseum. I could get on one subject and be on there for a month till I find out everything I want to find out about it. And I think, unfortunately, tackling this topic, it's very difficult to talk to young women now. Most of my history in the church has been working with young women. I was even a residential counselor in a group home, an orphanage, and I can just tell you what I've seen over the course of my 20 some odd years being in ministry, and that's this: that there are a lot of broken young girls, and one of the main reasons, yes, is fatherlessness, but it's also aimlessness. Most of them couldn't tell you what their purpose is or what they want to do because most of them don't think they can do anything, and they don't think anything they do will amount to anything. They're being told over and over again, even now, that who they are is wrapped up in their identity, literally. Not understanding that their identity really is hidden in Christ. It's not between their legs. It's not their hair. It's not their make. It's none of that. And because they believe that, what you see is girls in the market competing for visuals to try to grab some man, right? Who for the most part doesn't know who he is either. Because unfortunately, the enemy has pit us against men and pit men against us, literally. Where now we see them as the cause for all of our ills, and they see us as the same. Look at on any YouTube channel, you're going to see them talking about relationships. That's all that's on there now. Men need to do this, women need to do that. It's really sad.
It is, yeah, you're right. And we've been pit against each other when we are, I mean, women are created from men, and
Yes.
we're supposed to be the rib. We're supposed to literally have each other's backs, right?
Yes.
But they have us here, like, first of all, having these expectations that we're not even, like you said, meeting for ourselves. I want a
Absolutely.
high value man, but
What does that even mean?
yeah,
What does that
first,
even mean? Like even the language, like I try to ask people, like, why do you say, listen, so I'm doing a documentary, right? I actually pulled it up before we started talking because I was like, you know what, these terms can be adopted for what we're talking about. So the terms I have are, the title says, why do we adopt terms without asking why we use them? Okay, so I have Black history, Black magazines, but let's bring this over to the feminist sphere. Women magazines, rom-coms or women movies, female love, right? Women-led families, women artists, female identity, female conservatism, the female vote, female businesses. What? Think about that. So on one hand, you're decrying you're a victim. On the other hand, you're isolating and segregating yourself from everybody. Like, so you're victimizing yourself while you're crying you're a victim. Why do you need something called women magazines? If there's a woman on it and it's talking about women issues, don't we kind of all like know it's probably a female magazine? Not so many guys out there buying, Glamour or Cosmopolitan.
Right. Well, yeah.
Well, let me take that back. These
back
days,
in the 90s and early 2000s.
right? Yeah. These days, right? But female business. Okay, so if I run a business and it's female owned, let's say I'm a baker, is my cake that I sell going to taste different because I slap on there that it's a female run business? The only thing people are going to care about is that it's a good tasting cake.
Yeah.
Right. So you could tell this is just all this is trying to put identity ahead of actually what I'm performing or doing so that you will see me as a victim. Therefore, if I suck at cake baking, you won't feel like you can say anything because God forbid you say something against that female business. It's just games.
Oh
It's
my
social
God.
engineering.
Yes, that is so true. That's like even now to even bring that to race, like with the movies. This is why I get mad when, like, okay, the Little Mermaid, right? Like,
Oh, girl, don't even get
whatever,
me
right? You
started.
know
See,
what
you
I mean?
about to go there. You about to
Here's
go there.
here's the thing. Y'all could have really made her black and nobody would have probably really paid attention. But you told people they were racist for paying attention. And so now you already paint the picture. So like you said, like people are trying to fight to either be the victim, but then be strong, but then go back to having the cushion of being the victim again if
Right.
things don't go their way. You know, the movie hasn't even come out yet, but they put this girl in the situation, Halle Bailey, where that's all she's talking about is the race situation in a
Yeah.
movie. And
Yes.
as all is
Identity
predicated
politics.
around racism. Yeah, I'm dealing with the racism. And
But
it's
you knew that. But you knew that when you sold it. And look, to be fair, I'm just gonna push back a little bit. Hollywood has so check this out. If you look at any, and I love old movies, I consume tons of old movies. Okay, if you look at any old movie, especially biblical movies or historical movies, and it's like set in Egypt or Africa or any period of time where there had to be, let's say, colonialism or importing groups of people to Rome, okay, for servitude, you're going to see that most of the slaves were black.
like,
Okay. Now let's fast forward to today. There's a whole argument about them making who was it they just did this movie on, Jada Pinkett Smith. She
yeah,
gets on my
Cleopatra.
nerves. Okay,
Yeah.
they just did a movie on Cleopatra and they made her a black woman. Now all the Egyptians and everybody coming out telling about the Egyptians aren't black. Okay, wait, you can't have it both ways. You can't make the slaves you can't make the people that are doing all the serving black in one movie, and then because they've been doing this, right? So now, however, in the same movies where they made all the slaves black in Egypt, okay, they made all of the leaders and rulers white. Girl, that desert is hot. Ain't nobody in that Mediterranean looking that fair skin
Right.
with blonde. Stop. So they
Right.
know what they're doing, and they, like, again, it's intentional. It's
Right.
intentional. I don't like that they made the mermaid black for the simple fact that the very thing they are. Let me put it like this: if they give us a white panther, a white Black Panther, I'm here for it. I
Right.
think they should make a white black. He should have red hair, freckles, and
Yeah.
have to wear suntan lotion. Okay, and and can't really deal with the heat because he get burned. And then when they make it fair on both sides, it's all great. Other than that, I don't really care because I think these arguments that they keep putting out here, like you said earlier, are really used to divide and conquer. And we don't even realize that it's happening because we're caught up in the arts and the culture, and we want to be entertained and we like what we like. But the little arguments we're talking about, well, Halle Berry is black, and the mermaid didn't have dreadlocks, and people are like, but it's a mythological person. Who cares? Okay, well, they made Annie black. Okay, but she's not a real person. Okay, but why this is my thing. Why are you arguing? Are you arguing because you care, or are you arguing because they threw a bone in the middle of the scrapyard and put all the dogs to fight? Like, don't be so easily gullible, okay, and naive to get on, because they're watching what we're chatting about. They're watching what we're arguing about. If
Right.
you're sitting there arguing about Cleopatra being black, what are you adding to the conversation and what are you taking away from it? You're not changing the damn thing. Them people still making money. Why you
Right.
sitting there arguing about what color she is?
But so you're right about that. Now, the only thing for me, this is why I started with what I was saying. Before they used to do things like this and nobody really cared
True.
because, like I said to people, like they did the Cinderella with Brandy. No, there was no conversation about it. But they pre destine it with, before even the thing comes out, they're
Of
already
course.
labeling people with racism and all that, right?
Yes.
The
It's
only other
intentional.
thing too I will say about Hollywood now, though, that's different though. This is why I don't support what they do. First of all, I don't support it because I think it's tokenization of Black people, and I think that
It is.
now, don't get me wrong. I think that history could have. There's things about history we don't know. Okay,
Mhm.
and first of
It's
all,
very nuanced.
yeah, it is nuanced, right? And I'm not gonna get like caught up in like all the way to that, but again, Jada didn't say that. She didn't say like, oh, we're not sure about some things. We might have got some things wrong. She said everything in her documentary is right,
Mhm.
and if you don't like it, you're racist. So there you go. You already get a bunch of people say, well, now I don't want to hear nothing you have to say. That's
Right.
number one. Number two, Hollywood is actually putting out a bunch of communistic laws and tax breaks situations where you have to have this amount of black people in the movie, or non-whites in the movie, and this non-white narrative, and this non-white, and I'm not for communism in any fashion. So I'm like, this is an art. So what are we doing? But at the end of the day, this is also too why they're having that writers' strike, because AI is getting ready to take over, and with AI, they're not going to have these kind of conversations. They could just do whatever, and it is going to happen. But that's just because and this is why, going back to the communities, this is why you're supposed to defend what you're doing. You're supposed to defend your art. The first time somebody said that they felt underrepresented in any type of movie, people should have said, that's enough, stop right there, we're just making art. But no, they went along with it, and I seriously, they went along with it too much. And now y'all about to be written out of the situation, because the only way to make it equitable and fair is to get a machine to do it, because we're sure the machine doesn't have any biases.
That was always the intention. And that was always the intention.
That was always the intention.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing. The people that are playing these games, right, and putting content, because you have to understand, and I know you know this, that these people that put information out for us, it is very, very calculated. Very calculated. It's curated. Yes, to push back a certain narrative is all intentional. It's well thought out, right? I always tell my kids, anything you look at television, understand people have labored over this to understand the kind of feedback they're going to get, because they're about making money. They really don't care. I used to ask myself, why in the world would they put Dylan Mulvaney on something that would cost them money unless there's a bigger purpose that we're not seeing? And the bigger purpose is exactly what I just mentioned earlier, right? If you say to people, I don't give a damn about what you think about us putting a man who's dressing up like a girl on a bottle of beer that predominantly, white American men drink. Okay, I don't care about the fact that I'm insinuating that you should still buy what I have, though I'm no longer marketing to you. That tells me that ESG, right, is more about making money. So I can say, just like China, I ticked the box, I did and said the thing. And so even if I lose money from you, I'm already paid, because I've already talked to the higher ups that are paying me to do the thing I'm doing to begin with. That's why I don't care if you leave. Well, it's the same thing. When you look at, let's say, Patrice Cullors, okay, with BLM. People, listen, right in the heart, and I'm sure you've had these conversations, Casey, during the heat of that. I had conversations with other Black women who were supporting the ideology. Even, and this is after I said, you have to understand, she said out of her own mouth that they are trained Marxists. Their charter on their website said, we are here to destroy the nuclear family. So get out your mind that this is about race. It's not. And we know that because you see where she moved when she grifted with all that money. 2% Black people in that whole area in California, which I'm from.
That's enough for y'all.
Yeah, exactly.
Away from these.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can't live around Negroes. I just want to sell y'all something. And they bought the playbook lock, stock, and barrel. And it wasn't until after all the destruction, all the burning down, all the looting, that people went, oh no, she took the money? She wasn't you. Come on. How many times do you have to see a movie before you realize the end is always the same? So it's the same thing. Feminism is all about usurping authority, godly man authority, because men have order. They are literally the crux of what the family is predicated on. You remove him, right? You have chaos. Look, when Eve was talking to the snake, what does the Bible say? That she actually told him, no, we're not supposed to eat it. We're not supposed to even touch it. So people go, oh, well, she was deceived in that, like she didn't know. No, there are two types of deception. There's deception that comes from outside, and there's self-deception. When she reiterated the word, she knew she wasn't supposed to, but she ate anyway, because the Bible says she looked at it and saw it was pleasing to the eye, right? So her agenda was to be like God. This is an antichrist mind. She wasn't happy with what God gave her. And then Adam comes along being a doofus, right? And he completely knows it. The Bible didn't even say he was deceived. In fact, God said it was Eve who was deceived, not you. And he took the fruit from his wife. But notice, Eve was there unguarded by her husband. He doesn't mean he wasn't in the garden. He just wasn't in close proximity. Right. Because he could have said, Satan, shut your mouth, Eve, let's roll. Right. You take the man out the way, you have the woman. Chaos. Okay. Yes. easily deceived, okay, because she follows her passions and emotions, and the man isn't there to say, honey, we're not doing that. Let's
Yep.
go.
Yep.
So now she's pretty much on the war path, right? Reckless and wild and rebellious. And then
Yep.
she's the one governing over the children. What you think is going to happen to the children if you got a reckless, rebellious woman with no headship over her? And
Right.
remember, I'm not talking about just single women, because there are single women who actually serve God and they do an amazing job of raising their children. Okay. It's not perfect, but it's still better than the women who are out here on IG with their long Cardi B nails talking about, okay, and in the clubs,
Right.
and their children walking up and down the street. You've seen them, and you're like,
Right.
where are their parents at?
Right.
Are you 12? Yeah. So
Yeah.
nobody's governing the home.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because and really when you say it goes back to that, to God, because like my to even go back to what you were saying when you were like, I wasn't brought up in a Christian family, but I wish I was sometimes. No, your story is your story, because there's a lot of us who were brought up that way who leave it and don't come back because we don't know what we were doing and why we were doing it. I was blessed enough to have a mother to make sure that we knew why we were doing what we were doing.
Oh, praise
So
God
even
for that.
when I did leave it, because I did leave for a second, I was called back to it, and I could understand how I was being called back to it because I had a foundation in understanding what I was doing and why I was doing it. My grandmother was a single mother, and she was my grandfather's mistress, So
Girl, we
and
all
like
got a story.
yeah, I know. I used to try to not give her a hard time, but I used to ask her these crazy questions when I was 7 years old. When you're a kid, you don't understand. I'm like, how is so-and-so my uncle, but he's not your son? And they're like, everybody would start cracking up. And I'm like, I didn't get the answer, but
why y'all stacking up? What's going on over here?
but she had two daughters. And then once she realized that she was really a single mom, she buckled down, and she had, the help of her family, her mother and father, and she focused on the girls. Like she gave up her she gave up her personal life really, and focused on God and the girls. And this was in Haiti with no welfare, things like that. And I'm not coming at any type of assistance. I know people who use the assistance, by the way, and graduated off of it, but this is when she was selling cakes on the side of the road and stuff. And she did something right with the Lord, because both of these girls were able to make it to America, and they had families of their own. They were married, So, and it's funny because even though my parents, when they were breaking up, my mom still tried to make sure that I kept respect for my father as a father. She said he's a bad husband to me, but he's not a bad father, because he cheated like a lot. We talk about this now. It's okay. So I learned from it all, but but it's the pitting of women against the men it's terrible. But I want to also show this clip. Hold on, I'm gonna add this back to the stream, and I'm gonna show this clip with the welfare thing, because I had seen this before. I hope it's the same. Excuse me.
CBS reports. What are we doing to our children?
Now, I want to, for a moment, CBS reports. What are we doing to our children? Remember when the news used to do something a little right? But okay, so
you asking me to go back in the archives? Stop.
Right? Look how old this is. Like, they would never report anything that. So, all right, let's see.
With CBS News correspondent Daniel Shore.
13 miles from Paul Bullard's home is a public housing project in familiar red brick, Perry Homes. It is like most such projects in most big cities. And cemented into the red brick are a series of public policies that work against the children of the poor. Because housing for the poor is scarce, the 1,100 apartments hold not the officially registered 6,000, but with unofficial residents, relatives, and friends, more like 8,000. Because mothers travel up to 4 hours a day to work in downtown office buildings or suburban homes, their children are left to care for each other or for themselves, and drug abuse is rampant. Because family planning measures have lagged, there are many teenage mothers.
Do you find that there is an incidence of young girls becoming pregnant?
Yes, we have a high rate of that too.
What about what age?
I used to say age 14, but I'm thinking I'm having to back up and say age 12.
Wow. First of all, wow.
Because the poor are shortchanged on education, it may take 2 years to get testing for a child with learning problems. And the Perry Homes schools have reading levels among the lowest in the city.
So I'm going to stop right there because this is actually not the thing that I thought it was going to be. But that, like it's okay that it wasn't. But because that just said enough in the little bit what we just saw. Because I'm not going to play the whole 14 minutes, But are you, hello?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you see, the government came to help. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yep.
We're going to build you some homes and,
dun, dun, dun.
Right. We give you jobs, but only this many people are allowed to be in the home. So the father has to go. The actual documentary, I thought this was, and now they have me on a rabbit hole because I need to go find all these 1970s, news specials because they used to talk about the real issues.
They did.
So,
with real stats.
Yeah, like so the one that I did see though, it was about like this. It was this family. So it was a mom and a dad and a child, and the mom and dad, they both worked like at a hospital. I think they were like CNAs and transport and everything, but they were barely making it, living like paycheck to paycheck, trying to keep up. But there's a part in that documentary where the mother says, the wife, because they were married, she says, I could make more money with government assistance. Like I could be actually doing better, but I'd have to get rid of my husband. He couldn't be in the picture. Crazy. And she was like, but I don't want that. I want a family for my children. So talk about like, where you had them, like these women were making, like a woman like that had to make a decision between the government and the husband, But it's funny because how you said like, the man being like, all right, so if you go back to the 1800s and then you say how they were trying to tell the women that you're a proletariat to the man is your oppressor, and kind of breaking up the family that way. And then the man kind of symbolizes God in that moment, right? Mm-hmm. So if you really go back to it though, and you go fast forward, I always say there's a time where you're going to have to make a decision between the government and God. And so this is like, that's like a little bit of that. Like if you want, you're with us or are you with him? Do you really want this family? Do you want the family has been under attack from the beginning.
It has.
Wow.
But now, like you said, you've got the government incentivizing that destruction, right? I mean, if you look at first wave feminism, you had it working in tandem with Frederick Douglass, who was a friend of Lady B. Stanton, who was the lady who started a lot of this movement. And also Susan B. Anthony, believe it or not, the lady we're always told that made the flag, which I never believed that. I think it's just one of them dumb stories it sells. But they were the two women on the forefront of that. And they had letters going back and forth with Frederick Douglass, arguing pretty much over what was more important, that a black man got the vote first or that a woman did. And Douglass was like, well, until you guys are being hung from lampposts, we'll discuss your ability to vote later. And they parted ways over this. Okay. And then you had, what gave birth to the suffrage movement. But it was all predicated on women need to be allowed, to have the vote. And then the second wave, you had female empowerment, right? Sexual revolution. And then you had affirmative action creep in there. Notice how these two things are kind of working in conjunction. And then third wave was really about, the Black women saying that the first wave movement didn't really speak to their needs and their wants. And you had a lot of the lesbianism and we're all handmaids and abortion is strength and, we're free breeding and all this. And you had the gender studies. But I just want to kind of piggyback off of the examples you just gave with that video and what you were talking about, just to show you the connection to all these things to this one conversation. All right, so you have supporters of abortion, euthanasia, feminism, homosexuality, right? They're against Christianity. They are a part of a culture that rejects morality. They reject patrimony, of the past and the present. They seek to overturn traditional ideas of family and marriage. So any topic you can discuss, present day culture is connected to either 1, 2, 3, or all of those things I just mentioned. Okay, because if you don't care about life, then you can't care. This is one they always kill me about feminists. They're always talking about women's rights, okay? But then they're also pro-abortion. You killing all the girls you claim to be fighting for before they even get here. Explain that one to me. Explain that one to me.
Yeah.
That's contradictive, right?
Right.
You claim you want women, like right here in Louisiana, they have the sex workers unite thing where the government actually incentivizes these social. I'm not even kidding you. Not kidding you. I got the picture.
I believe you.
It's a flyer they put out where they claim Black women do not get the housing that they need because of, again, we talked about earlier, education and finance. So they claim since these women are usually on the peripheral of society, they need to be allowed to get free housing through the government as sex workers. I mean, just think about what imagine living in a community where those people are living there. And you can't have a husband live in your house, but you can have Johns come running through, and the government will incentivize and stuff. So now, if that same girl who's living that high risk lifestyle has children, she's not keeping that baby 9 times out of 10. So you got the government making money in 5 different ways just off of these individuals who they're claiming they're supporting. Okay. And all of it is geared toward control. Because see, if I help you, if I come knock on the door and I say I got the answer to incentivize your issues, like you said, I become daddy. I become mommy. Now you're dependent on me. And if you're dependent on me and you need me, I get to take away and I get to give. The Bible says God give and take away. The government wants to replace that and say, I give and I take away. And if you don't do what I say, I can pretty much put you in a really bad spot. I got to put you in a really bad spot. So instead of the husband being the one who determines, where the money goes, how the money flows, what the children do and cannot do, right? What we represent, what we look like as a family unit, you removed him. So now the government comes and tells you, and it's so bad, Casey, that even women like you and I and others who do not agree with this ideology, we're called TERFs. If we don't agree with trans ideology, we're called anti-feminist. So we're not even seen as women anymore. We've been kicked out of the women's sphere, and I don't know what we are.
Okay.
Guess we're part of the patriarchy too.
But no, how you're so right. And isn't it crazy? It's all prophesied that evil will be called good and good will be called evil.
Absolutely.
Literally was reading today, especially with all of this trans everything, and apparently last Wednesday was some sort of let me go ahead and find it on Twitter because I have it on my notifications, my bookmark, because I was shocked when I saw this.
Women's Day?
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
I said, what was it? Women's Day?
Please, there's no such a thing anymore. Why would it be Women's Day? I mean, what girl? I mean, they act like there's something like that, but like a Women's Month, but I don't even know what that is. I never needed one though. But this thing about IDHO, Ida Hobbit, right? And I hate that I know, kind of made it a word because it's not. It's like apparent, and I'm like, what is this thing? This Ida Hobbit thing, and we stand in solidarity. And I'm like, what is it? International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, Biphobia.
Oh Lord.
And then there's another word they use too, but it wasn't just, it was interphobia, some crap. I was like, yo, what they coming up with these words? Like, yeah, like, here we go. And this is our Secretary Anthony Blinken on International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Interphobia. What is inter? And transphobia, we call for an end to harmful conversation, therapy practices, including those that attempt to change a person. Now, listen to this. I keep saying conversation, conversion therapy practices, which is still conversation, because they'll call conversion therapy like if some girl comes to you and says, I think I'm a boy, and you'd be like, sis, you want to think about that again? You already have engaged in conversion therapy. So anyway, but listen to this. So here are the bad guys. I want you to hear who the bad guys are, including those that attempt to change a person's sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or sex characteristics. Wait a minute. That's what y'all are doing.
Exactly.
How y'all pegging me as the bad guy here?
Yeah.
When did I become you see what I'm saying?
1984 said up is down, hot is cold, war is peace. That's why.
Yeah, like but what they're doing, they're taking children and they're trying to change their characteristics and all. But if you're not down with it, that means that you're trying to change their characteristics.
Yeah.
Because you want to keep them natural.
Inverted reality, upside down kingdom. That, and again, it goes back to what I said about Yuri Bezmenov, right? With that social engineering. The first thing they seek to do is to completely change the language and the scope of what those words mean. And listen, this, I don't know if you've ever read 1984, but in 1984, this doesn't happen one time. It happens over and over and over. Okay, and the lead character has to constantly update the language. He has to constantly say, "Oh, this word don't mean that anymore. This word means something else." It's exactly what we're doing. So now, if you, Casey, say, "You know what? I was talking to someone and I told them, listen, I know you might think, that this is what's going on, but here's the truth of it. It's not really that. You can be accused of a hate crime." So now it's gone beyond just your opinion, my opinion. Now it's gone into and this is what equity does, right? This is exactly why I can't stand that terminology, because they're trying to make it equal with equality. The only person you'll ever read that's able to be equitable is God, because he created everything and he knows what fairness truly is. We're able to adjust to equality, okay, and create laws to enforce inequality. That is the best that we have, and it's the only thing we should have, because what equity does is it has to steal rights from one group to give them to another. Nothing can ever be equitable. Somebody is going to be unhappy. Somebody is going to be on the losing end, because I, as a human with my own biases or proclivities, okay, am not going to be able to make this group over here happy while I'm over here giving all these things to this other group. The same thing with the gender thing. If you allow women to say, listen, I don't want men in my bathroom. Well, how can we make that equitable? We have to make what you're saying hateful. We have to completely remove the fact that you really are a true woman by saying we don't even know what a woman is, except when we say men are becoming women, then we know what women are. So yeah, so it's a way of screwing with your mind, so that after a while, because I don't know if you went through this, but like during COVID, right? One thing that I love is language. I pay attention to words and language very much. During COVID, I told Donovan, my husband, I said, look, I want you to pay attention to what you see on the screen. At home together, social distancing. I was picking up on this stuff before it even became like a big thing. And I said, listen, they have to put two contradictive terms together. They have to, because that's called psycholinguistics. It's a way of confusing your mind. Your mind is going to gravitate toward the negative thing first. That's just how our minds do, because it's a way of our brain's problem solving. But if I mix something negative with something positive, your brain is confused, because there's a little bit of truth, right? And there's a little bit of a lie. You won't surely die. You understand? It's the same tactic. So yeah, did Eve drop dead when she ate the fruit? No, but she spiritually died. She lost that relationship with the Lord. It's the same thing. We are like, oh, we'll just stay at home together. We'll just social distance. We literally repeated all the language to each other. I'm social distancing. I'm wearing my mask, right? I'm saving the planet. I'm protecting grandma. It's like, do you know that you weren't saying these words like 3 years ago? Stop it. Listen to yourself.
And so we'll start the wrapping up, right? But what you bring up there is this whole thing is, my God, right? Like it's been wicked. Yeah, it is. Like the seeds were planted to even get us to the point of 2020.
Yes.
A 2020 that I needed, because that's what really yanked me back in position. I started to get a little bit back a little bit into, because let me tell you something. The propaganda, first of all, women, yes, we are emotional, and when we get emotional, we get hysterical, okay? And I'm gonna keep it all the way. Like I tell people, and I laugh about it today, but I was in a danger. I don't want to. Yeah, it was dangerous, because I was so far into ideology that I was disconnected from God. I questioned God's existence, and I mean, because I thought I was a God. You hear how delusional? That's delusional. I'm not afraid to tell people this, because I like for people to know where I was and why I am like this today, because how dangerous that is.
Absolutely.
What that does to a person, you can now brainwash the heck out of somebody like that.
Yes.
I'm not saying I'm just saying on an emotional standpoint, right? On emotions. And that's where I was. because I was in the right position to be that way. I will say I was working at this nursing home, and everybody knows about this nursing home. Like their practices were crazy. Like, but I was very professional at work. I never said, "Oh, y'all are being racist." I never said that because I'm still old school with certain things. If I can't actually prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, I'm not gonna label people with certain things, So even when I was really, really on the left, I still had some rationality. Okay, so I still believed in the Constitution, all right, and people's free, rights to speech, but emotionally, I was all the way there. Like America's nothing but an oppressive country, and let me finish. And
but don't never leave though. Okay, I'm just saying.
Right, but let me finish. I'm saying, like, I just like this, and I just all this and my melanin, I'm melanin.
Melanin popping. You had that song before they had it. I can't see my melanin popping.
Right, like because I'm supernatural. Like dog, just all kinds of blasphemy too. By the way, and like
that's awesome. Though.
Me and my best friend crack up about that. She's like, "Yeah, I wasn't saying all that."
She leaving you out there by yourself
because I was like, but I was an emotional woman, right? So okay, now, and then they really had me because Donald Trump became president, so the media was on it, racism, and then I'm in this place, and so everything's working on it, right? So, because all of a sudden that word, when he became president, it was like all of a sudden there was Confederate flags everywhere, except for there wasn't. But anyway,
in your mind's eye,
right? Yeah, that's how they had it. Like, it was just insane. Even though there was still that little voice inside of me, like, it's really not that bad though. But I just was still emotional. But I had ended up graduating, a transition from LPN to RN. And then in 2019, I went to Haiti, and because I'm of Haitian descent. So I went there to, visit. It was like I had went a few times. I said, let me go one more time. And it was so bad because it was like riots, real riots, not this, riots every day. I could not enjoy myself. It was literally Survivor Island. Like I had all these plans to go to different resorts in South Haiti and this, that, and the third. Couldn't do anything. I had to stay, like, I was stuck in a hotel room because I would have probably got killed outside. There was no electricity because the government didn't give electricity. I mean, it was just absolutely insane. Like it was. My little American self was like, I don't know how y'all do it out here. I was like, I ain't died cancer because it was trash. I mean, it is sad, trust me. But it was just like, it was chaos. And I was like, how do y'all survive? And, when I got home, let me tell you, and I just flicked the light on, I was like, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States.
And patriotism came out quick.
Right? Because I was like, that's when I started to grow up. Like, what are you complaining about? Like, what do you mean you're oppressed, dog? What are you talking? You do not know struggle. Like, you've never struggled. Like, dead serious. Like, whatever struggle you think you had in America, you've never struggled before, right? Now, 2020 comes along. And so, so all of this anger is finally starting to be chipped away from my heart. And then we hear, 2 weeks is slow to spread. And I'm like, what does that mean? And then it was just like, everything was happening fast. Like, and God was showing me, like, this is not just because at first I was like, America just gonna want to just say somebody got COVID and then that's it. And then we're going to be out of it, just like we did with Ebola. But that's not what happened. They was like, we're going to shut down for 2 weeks. And I immediately got this like feeling in the pit of my stomach because I know, I'm like, that's not how you deal with the virus.
That's right.
What are we doing? What is this about? And for months, I watched this thing. I watched the world move in lockstep. Yeah. Right? Even if there was countries that pulled out, but still, I can't get 4 patients in a room to do the same thing. The whole world was moving. And like you said, and I was sensitive to all these words, at home together. You know what I'm saying? When Oprah and all these billionaires are telling you, stay home, stay home, stay home. That's all I'm hearing. And I'm like, yo, this is insane. And then they were playing like these premium movies on regular television because they wanted people to stay home. All of a sudden, and I was so embarrassed of the nursing community because they became here. And it was women. I'm an essential worker. I'm a hero. Look at my mask. I mean, there were some men, right? But mostly women. Look at my mask. Oh my God, I'm saving lives. Everybody stay home because my feet hurt and I can't work this hard. And I'm like, this is what we signed up for. I'm like, we're nurses. Like, like this isn't like it's HIV when people were like literally dropping dead and they didn't know what was causing it. Like they had to test the Crisco because they weren't sure. Right? Like, so if it's a respiratory virus, we need to protect our old people, but at the same time, people need to get the hell outside the house.
Exactly.
And I was like, and then everything just started to break apart. And, I just started to just see like how we are lied to and the fact that like they keep us divided and all.
Yes.
And then it was election season. And remember, I can't breathe and all that, how that was used. And let me tell you, Black Lives Matter was a group that I never was involved with, because even when I was on the left, them broads, when I checked their mission statement, and they said, we're for Black men, Black women, excuse me, take out the first part. We're for Black queer, Black gay, Black women, and Black this, and they never said they protect Black men. I said, I don't know what this group is about. Yep. And that was back in 2016. I seen that. And I said, I don't know what this group is, but I love men and I'm not going to be a part of it. Women get on my nerves anyway, so I do not need to be something. And all it was put was like her story instead of history, right? Her story. And I'm like, that's extra. But I was younger than, so all I was like, that's extra. That's so extra. Today I know what it is. It's brainwashing, right?
Absolutely.
But it was just insane. So then when election time came around and all that, all this looting and Black Lives Matter and all this screaming and all for days and months and everything, I was like, oh shoot, my bad. Like, this is not what, protesting is supposed to be. What's going on? And then, and I'm going the fast version. So I had already by September, I said, I'm voting for Donald Trump. And I had to, now mind you, the one who was melanin and, supernatural, so black and black. So like, but I was like, this is the best decision for, if I even care about a Black community, we should not vote for Joe Biden because gas prices is going to be higher. He's not going to drill at home. There's going to be massive illegal immigration. I never thought to this extent though. What I'm seeing today, by the way, I could not have imagined World War III on the moon, dollars devaluing. I'm just like, what the heck? But I said, no, I said, I'm voting for Donald Trump. And, of course I had people, the people close to me, we were all like kind of seeing things was crazy. But of course, people on Facebook like, you're too oppressed to vote for Donald Trump. A white woman, a liberal, told me that. She said that she's more privileged than me, and I don't understand what I'm doing.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you're Black. You're not supposed to be able to critically think. What's wrong with you? That's not racist, by the way, saying that to you. That's not racist at all.
Right? She said she was. And then when I went to the Black guy that I knew that she knew, and I'm like, yo, your friend is calling me oppressed, bro. Like, what's that about? And then he's like, well, even if you don't feel that way, your friends do. And I'm like, bro, my friends. None of us feel this. And I was just like, yo, what was, because I had pulled out of that box that I was in. So now I'm looking down, I'm looking at it like, yo, what is this? Anyway, but I'm getting to this point. When I heard Kamala Harris the day before the election say,
I just got triggered and heard her laugh.
Like God. Sorry, I keep saying God. Like, wow. But she made this quick little snippet of equity and talking about what equity is and how you take a little bit from one person and give it to another, so then everybody could see over the gate and all this stuff. And then I saw about the reset situation, and I said, oh, this is a globalist thing. I said, he's not going to be president tomorrow. I felt it. So this is bigger than just even an election, because that's when God was working on me. He was like, I'm putting the pieces together for you. Go back to that Bible. And that's when I went back to my Bible. I went back to Bible studies, and I was like looking, and I'm like, yo, this is right here.
Your awakening happened at the perfect time too, sis.
Yes. And I'm like, this is it. This is the agenda. I'm like, oh my goodness. And then even now, fast forward to today. And so I can assess a situation very well, but that is a gift given to me by God.
That's discernment. Yes.
Yeah. Like,
I need more of that. That's it. That is a gift. It definitely is a gift.
Yeah. I thank God for it, because when I see things happening, I'm like, yo, this is going to happen. And a lot of times it does, but this is God showing me, like, I have it written right here. And this is moving towards that's going to happen. And weirdly, it's almost exciting, Because I'm like,
it is
old book, right? And it's
yes.
like so
It is.
practical today. It's just right here. It's instructions. But an emotional woman, to go back to that, and imagine today I would still be that crazy girl talking about melanin and everything supernatural, and now I have a YouTube, and I would be infecting the minds of so many people. This is why women are definitely used to do this, especially Black women, because we're loud. And when we talk like we know what we're talking about. Like,
yep. With some authority.
We'll be making up the whole thing and be like, yeah, because the cells, that's how they work, because they have a different enzyme. And we
oh my God. Oh, and dumb people don't even go look and be like, yes, sis, and don't even go look into it.
It's just get a bunch
like, stop
of
affirming that stupidity. Please stop it.
Yes, like and so now, of course, the stuff that I do talk about, it gets pushed back. It is what it is, and ready for the pushback. But I'm meeting so many awesome people along the way, so many awesome women, because this stream, we're talking about all this, and then we're talking about like feminism, women, but there is a real, like, it's not ideology. God did make us all with different purposes.
Yes.
Based on, what he needed us to do, men to protect, to bring back the food, and, just even the protecting, the organizing in the mind.
Yes.
Right. Not to get hysterical first and to say, wait a minute, how are we going to solve this? Right.
That's right.
But then women also to breathe motivation and inspiration into people with the right things. Right.
Yes, absolutely.
So there's a reason. So here's the real quote, feminism, but we're not going to call it that. That's what this is. And I'm meeting so many amazing people and amazing women, such as yourself, on this journey.
I feel the same way.
Message.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like, and you kind of said a lot, like, as you were talking, my mind is just, you said like a lot. I don't mean like a lot of words. I mean like a lot of truths, like in your story, and the way you kind of like encapsulize what your perspective was and what was happening around you, and I can only hope that so many more young women such as yourself, start kind of just having and forgive me for quoting this because I can't spell Oprah, but aha moment, right? So where they just go, wait, this is not, I know I had cognitive dissonance, but something's not sitting right with me, and I need to like deal with it and confront it instead of just, continually lying to myself. I just finished reading about something called the divine goddess of feminism. So there really is a spiritual aspect to this. And you were even talking about how you were deceived. And I told you, I was raised in Buddhism. And trust me, there's a lot of that divine feminine, masculine energy nonsense in that too, where women can see themselves as, pseudo gods. But it says that goddess feminism emerged onto the scene early in the feminist movement. It had a political edge. It was about women affirming other women. Okay. And that being female meant you could still be strong. Goddess feminism, listen to this because you got to hear the spiritual implications. Goddess feminism arose in clear opposition to patriarchy and patriarchal religions. It was born of an explicit critique of societies which were organized around male domination, violence, and war, and of the male god or gods of patriarchal religions that justify domination, violence, and war. The sacred masculine needed to be trumped. So we may not partake of that stuff, but you got to understand, a lot of these women, if you read about their history that started these movements, they are very much tapped into this. And even when we kind of go rogue and think that, I'm the cradle of civilization, it's a lot of that Black religious nonsense, right? Where, the cradle starts in the woman's womb. And so we give life and we give birth and all this nonsense, as if we have like a seed of our own. And all of that is rooted in trying to completely destroy what God created. It really is just a perversion of God's creation. It literally is. And like I said before, women, and I'll end on this note so you can, tie up your show the way you want to. And I really appreciate you having me here. It's like so cathartic to have these conversations. I love this type of go back and forth. I love it. But we have to remember this. I'm just going to end on this note. There are literally all over the internet feminist prayers for women. They take bits and parts of the scripture and they mix it with their feminist ideologies. It's really sick and perverse. So I'm going to say this. If we want to see
God bless us. And I'm not even talking about us as a nation, right? Because I don't really have a nationalistic outlook. I have a citizen of a kingdom outlook. And my outlook is that women, those of us who hold to the truth of God's word, okay, and those of us who believe that God has order, because he is not a God of confusion, we need to not only be talking about it, right, but we need to be about it. We need to exemplify feminine behavior, okay, a quiet and meek spirit. That doesn't mean not talking. You and I are obviously having conversations all over the place. A quiet and meek spirit just means you're teachable. You're not trying to, run ramshod over other men or even tell other women to be quiet, because they don't agree with you. It is a teachable spirit, because that's what Christ had. And we need to remember from where we came. If we remember, we were made by God, taken out of man to be presented to man. We will not ever look to seek for another identity outside of that. We'll simply submit to it. And there is so much beauty in that submission, because what God does is he always honors what honors him. So if we can come back to that, and there might be a remnant, because there's always a remnant, out of 50,000, there'll be 5. And that's fine. We'll take that 5. But with that 5, we have to show God that we're good stewards. When God reaches out to us and says, Casey, I'm going to open your eyes for the first time so you'll see things you never saw. Ebony, I'm going to open your eyes. Katie from Louisiana, and on and on. So many women that we're all running into, which thank God for these spaces and these channels, because, we would have never met, right? So I want us to actually take it and use actionable items. And it could be as simply as teaching someone younger than you where you came from. Your testimony has so much power, right? I was really blessed with just what you've shared, because I didn't really know a lot about you. But even that blessed me, because you're a young woman. I have daughters, 3 of them, 21, 15, and 10. I want them to have the ideology you have. I want them to see there is something beautiful in this life in being a woman. And it doesn't need to be altered or changed. It doesn't need to change the position. It doesn't need to domineer. It needs to simply be and exist in the space God gave me, because everything is provided for that space. And I'll just end on that note.
And that's a beautiful note to end on. Because like I was saying, these journeys bring us to this point, and we learn, and we see things for what they are, and there's still probably it's so much more that we'll see and we'll have to learn from. But man,
definitely,
it is a beautiful journey. It is a beautiful journey, and more people need to know that. More people need to know that even the struggles that they're going through is part of the journey.
That's
if they
right.
could just see it that way, and that they're worth it, and that is, and if I have to, be, I'm a woman going to say something, though, then that's the type of stuff I want to say to people. You're worth
That's
it.
Right. That's right.
To be great in the name of God. And so,
Absolutely.
so to wrap up, but tell everybody again, where they can find you. I put your link on the chat a few times, and then I'm going to put it on the description, but just tell everybody a little bit more about yourself again, because there were people who came afterwards. So you can do your outro. That's what we call it.
Thank you, sis. I appreciate that. Yeah. So I'm Jambalaya Talks. You can find me on Instagram, Jambalaya Talks 1. You can find me on Instagram, Jambalaya Talks, and then on Twitter, Jambalaya Talks 1. And I also have my YouTube channel, which is the same name, Jambalaya Talks. And yeah, I pretty much just like to kind of get mostly believers. I primarily speak to, but I'm talking truth to anybody who will listen. But I kind of have the mindset of being the provocateur of rallying the troops to get us to refocus, to remember what our mission and our duty and our calling is, and to do what's called in Hebrew Shema, to hear and do. Don't be a hearer of the word only, be a doer, so we can make an impact in this life while we have it.
Awesome. And Tag, it was something else I was going to say to you. Now I'm so mad I forgot.
I'm the 50-year-old. You remember too young for that.
First of all, the fact that when you said your age, I think it was at the space. I was like, what? I thought you was younger than me.
Oh, well, thank you. You just made my night.
You just have this bright spirit and everything, and you look great. So I was like,
thank you.
And then, I was going to ask you, how is the chicken coop going? Because I
saw it's going beautiful. Yeah, you saw my video I posted today. Yeah, they're huge, and they're eating me out of house and home. And I'm just kind of learning as I go. That's why I'm kind of keeping a little, video diary of it, because
I'm a city girl. I'm from California. I've never had a chicken in my life, but I just up one day. I was like, you know what? I've got to try to build something for my family, and not be dependent on the system. And so I also think in terms of having where I can help my neighbors. And when I say neighbors, I mean like the Good Samaritan type of neighbor. Somebody that's in need. If I can feed them, if I can clothe them, if I can house them, I want to be able to know how to teach other people to do that too. So yeah, they're doing great. They're awesome. A bunch of women, so they probably are feminists too, but I'm trying to get their mind right. Maybe I need to put on my YouTube channel on the iPad and then get them together.
All right, like, don't get hysterical, okay? Don't start.
Yeah. When I come in there, they start talking crazy. I'm like, I have a feeling they gossiping about me. I really do, because I came a little late with the feed. I'm like, I know y'all talking bad about me.
Like, look at she did all late. What was she doing?
Exactly.
Doing what we were doing.
Probably, exactly. Probably because she black. That's what it is. Black people got PP time.
Yo, you crazy. Yeah, I can't take it. But that's something where y'all built that coop too, right? Because I remember.
Yeah, my husband. Yeah, we had some wood in the back, and because he had built a shed, he built a huge shed for himself. My husband went to school for engineering, and he's an electrician by trade, but he literally would just draw stuff. He and his father and brother they're from St. Lucia, and they used to build houses all the time on the island. So he just kind of has this knack for drawing a quick sketch and going outside doing the darn thing. And I mean, just grab materials that he found. Yeah, he's awesome. I'm like, awesome. He's awesome.
You're like, yeah, he just has a knack for just
he does
designing and bringing it to life. Just a little knack for
girl. I'm telling you, look, when you be in the midst of it, I'll be trying to give my advice, and he was like, "Why are you doubting me?" I'm like, "Okay, I'm sorry. I forgot who I'm talking to."
Yeah,
Bob Vila, go do what you got to do. It's all good.
Oh my goodness, yes, that's a throwback to Bob Vila.
Yes, it is.
Yes. I mean, shout out to the men too, right? Like, shout out
telling
to
you,
men,
girl.
Like real quick, my best friend, she had to do a party because she does, the balloon decorations and everything, and we're really gonna like launch a business out of this because she's amazing with her designs.
Awesome.
But something was like blowing over, it wasn't like anchoring right, and it was her husband who was like, I could anchor it with a tent. She was like, Casey, I would have never thought of that, and you wouldn't have been there. I'm like, girl, no, I wouldn't have.
Man, look, let me tell you something. We go camping every year, and this man puts up a military style tent with metal poles, canvas. I mean, and this is without like a print or a paper. He just remembers every year, and I'm like, dude, yeah. I mean, yeah. Hats off to the men. Praise God for them. They are lovely, lovely creatures.
Yes, they are, and we need to keep reminding the room and the good men that they are lovely creatures. So thank you for that.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
And with that, guys, so yes, thank you everybody for coming through the chat. The chat was alive as always, because without y'all there is no us. So
absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So thank you guys for the energy, for hitting the like button, for everything. And I'll see you guys at the next video, the next live.
Thanks, Casey. Shalom.
Wait, don't hang up just yet.
Okay.
I'm getting to tell people that.